Then he wrote chapter by chapter, and he asked them to check the writing, see was it child-friendly, or was it humorous, etc. And to check, as far as they knew, its historical accuracy, consistency, and suggest ways to improve the story. They did over a 3-year period. So, he would be grateful if Jamil, as evaluator of the speech, is aware of his concerns, and more importantly, that the purpose of the speech is to describe the experience of the project to the club. So with a speech entitled The Project, I'd like to welcome Mark.
Well, thank you, Jimmy, for that very comprehensive introduction. In actual fact, I think he's given half the speech for me, which is a relief because I'm quite nervous tonight. Now, as some of you know, one of my pastimes is writing short stories. And I wondered, following on from that, whether I could write a novel, a full-length novel. And as Jimmy said, I wrote the first chapter of this fantasy novel. I also wrote the first couple of chapters of a novel about intrigue in an engineering company. And the writing group really loved the fantasy novel introduction. So I sat down with them and agreed that they would help me write it. And the first thing we did was to plan exactly what this project was. And it was one, to write a novel, but it was a particular novel. It was aimed at children, it should be readable, it should be approximately 70 to 100,000 words long, it should be historically accurate, entertaining, it should appeal to adults as well as children, and I should complete it hopefully in 6 months to a year. Now we were ready to go, so I would write chapter by chapter and ask them when I emailed them chapters as I wrote them, and the understanding was that they would check for grammatical accuracy. It seems a strange thing, but you don't always see your grammatical mistakes you make. For consistency, for historical accuracy, but most important, for readability for children. And we commenced. Now, it took me a lot longer to do than the 6 months to a year. It took nearly 3 years, yeah? So the first thing now it wasn't time sensitive, so it didn't matter in some senses, but it showed my time management was very poor, and if I was doing a project, I'd have to improve on that. They also looked at plot development, especially when I asked them. And fairly early on, chapter 4 it was, we came across a problem. The novel wasn't moving as well as it should, and my central character, who was a 12-year-old boy who was going to save London from a mad homicidal king, yeah, wasn't really connecting. And they advised me to change the central protagonist from the boy to the king. And I thought that was quite wrong, because the king was a totally despicable character. But they thought he was a lovable rogue. So I tried that for a few chapters and it worked. Another change they made on the plot, or suggested I took on board, was that I should introduce some conflict between the boy and his father, and also introduce a secret about the boy that only one person in the book knew about, but the readers knew about. So that gave them a sense of empowerment. Now what this did was, it gave you a sense of tension, because you had the tension between the boy and his father, yeah? The father wouldn't let his boy go to college, and there was a good reason for that, but nobody knew why, yeah? So, they had a great impact. That was just 2 examples of their input on plot, yeah? Their input on historical accuracy, much to my surprise, they suggested sources that I'd never thought of. I was using Pepys's diary. There's another diary, John Evelyn's. I'd never heard of it. It was very useful. And they found for me a map of 17th century London, the streets. And as I had chase scenes through London in the dark, it was very useful to know that the streets were pretty much where they are now. So I used them in that way. Now, then it comes on to a question of what I learned from the process. And there are lots of things you learn on a journey like this. A journey like this is very much self-discovery and discovering what your friends are like who are on the panel with you and advising you and having input. One of the other things, the most important thing, is learning that the power of 7 people is so much stronger than one person on their own. Next, I'm just going to pause a second because I've got to drive.
We'll have a glass here for you, Mark.
Oh, thanks a lot. The next thing I learned, and possibly the most important, was writing can be a very lonely affair and it's very easy to get discouraged. But the way I did it with these, and we do it collectively, you got people with you on the journey and that encourages you. And as we did it chapter by chapter, we had a process of continuous affirmation and assessment, yeah? So when I'd done chapter, say, 7 or 17, I knew that people were happy about it. They'd actually raised their problems and I'd gone in and corrected them, yeah? And that was a great help, because normally when you write a book and you send it off to the editor comes back and you're back to chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4. And it's like building a house, yeah? You don't build the walls until the engineer says the foundations are okay. And having other people looking at it, gives you fresh ideas. When we were building our house, our engineer suggested we had the sunroom on one end of the house, yeah? And we thought, and it looked great on the plans, yeah? And then someone said to us, well, hang on, wouldn't it be better round the back because it would be facing the south to get the sun and the views, yeah? So it's always a good idea when you're doing something if you can get other people's ideas and input. Now, as I said, my greatest weakness in this, I produced the 78,000 words. As I say, it's unpublished as yet, and maybe unpublishable, but we'll see, of course. Yeah. But my greatest weakness in this was time management. Yeah, I was way over what I anticipated and what I'd planned for and what we'd planned for. And that would be something that I would need to spend time looking at, and I'd have to be more disciplined another time. And I would say, as we're just about to have a change in government, that if there's anyone from government listening and they want a project manager to get the Children's Hospital and rural broadband back on time, for heaven's sake, don't choose me. Because I'll make an even worse job of it. Thank you very much.